Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see y'all. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're old to the channel, this is Steve is back. And for everyone out there that doesn't know how the system works here, if you have any questions, throw them in chat. And this is Steve. We'll highlight them and make sure we answer them after the presentation, which we always have. And while you're in chat, be respectful of families, mods, and each other. And so tonight we're going to be looking at the unspent round that was discovered at the crime scene of the Delphi homicides. And with that being said, let's get that. Yep. All right. If you have any information about Libby or Abby and the offender, Richard Allen, absolutely make sure that law enforcement has that information so that justice can be had for this horrible case of double homicide. But tonight we're looking specifically about the timeline, the time frame of how and what is the importance of that round being left at the crime scene. It's one thing if we look at Richard Allen saying that, yes, I was on the trails, I was on the bridge, I was there at a critical time frame. It's one thing when you have individuals, because we have a lot of individuals that were on that trail that day, including the witnesses, that if that's all you have, all of them would be in the same position of Richard Allen, of admitting, yes, I was there. But the thing that Richard Allen has against him that these other witnesses and people that were on the trail that day is that there has been a unspent round found at the crime scene between two victims of a homicide, and that's the totality of the circumstances of when did that bullet get there, how did it get there, and is the scientific analysis and from the expert that would be testifying in court, how would that be looked at? And it also, we have to look at, do we think that there's a wild, there's a lot of information out there and controversy. Is there a chain of evidence? If there's some type of bullet, unspent round, that's in possession of any law enforcement agency out there, there is a chain of custody that started at some point. Now, the time frame of when it started is another critical point that we have to look at. If the bullet was, or the unspent round was found days or weeks after law enforcement left the scene, of course, it opens up several avenues for Richard Allen to say, hey, I visited the crime scene. And people will argue, well, in previous statements, he said he had never been, or if there are statements out there that he'd never been to the specific location of where the victims were. Those things that in the court system and testifying that the defense attorneys may be able to overcome any prior statements denying that he was at the crime scene, that he may have visited after the homicides occurred. Week later, 3 days later, anytime after law enforcement released it, if Richard Allen says he went to the crime scene and due to his fears he was armed, yes, there's going to be an argument possibly of determining exactly when that bullet was discovered. Now, if we have a chain of custody that clearly shows that while law enforcement had custody of the crime scene, and was in total control of that crime scene. And if that bullet is discovered in that time frame, then it's something that we have to look at as far as yes, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about the chain of custody, and it was taken in by the CSI. And even with that, though, we still have to look at, is there a possibility that Richard Allen was at that crime scene sometimes prior to the crime occurring, and by some weird, strange coincidence, that the victims, Libby and Abby, was attacked, and a double homicide occurred at that same location where Richard Allen, at sometime in the previous time frame, had been there. And that's the importance of that. We have to look at as far as the time frame and timeline. And the other night, while I was in Sleuth's chat, I had an interesting question brought up to me. And it said, can it be determined, let me make it larger so I can read it. Can it be determined how long an unspent round found at a crime scene has been exposed to the environment? This question was posed by Criminality, Teresa, and absolutely brilliant question. And I got to thinking about it, and I told her I'd get back with her on that. And so I've sent some emails to both Sleuth and Criminality, thanking them for my participation in chat and everything, and that I would provide them with whatever information they wanted to as far as our discoveries through these control tests that I'm looking at. Because it's important that while this bullet may be linked directly to Richard Allen's firearm, if it was left there a year prior to the crimes, that's important. If it was left there the day of the crime, that's important. If it was left 2 weeks after the crime, that's important. And so the condition of that bullet, and can it be determined? Because a bullet just laying out exposed to the elements, certain things occur. It depends on what type of metals that spent round is made of. And that's one of the reasons I'm running these controls for the fact that while looking at, and I've already discovered some interesting information from the control test that I have already started just a couple of days ago, which I found extremely interesting and been working on for the last couple of days. But and we'll be sharing that with everybody here as we proceed. But this is what we're going to be looking at tonight, is the setup of the of different types of casings that bullets are made from. And the casing itself can be several different metals, and I'll show you the ones that I looked at and the ones I had access to. And now when we get into it, I'll explain that while I do have the four major types of casings that more than likely, or I'd say 99 point something percent probability, that regardless of the round and the manufacturer of this unspent round, it's going to be one of these types of casings. And I wanted to see what exposure to the environment and also to the soil, because soil has different elements and compounds and things that could have reactions with metals. And so that's what we're going to look at. And I can already tell you that just in one day, I can see a reaction on at least one different type of material that makes up casings. So found that interesting, but we'll get into it now. These are different caliber firearms. The two unspent rounds starting from the left side is a 40 caliber nickel brass, and then we have a 40 caliber just brass casing. Nickel brass, of course, has that compound or element introduced into it. Some people like shooting it, and is it any better than brass? Everybody has different sayings. There's a reason for it to be made. I couldn't tell you all the reasons for it. They're bright silver bullets. Then I have another round over here to the side. I think it's a 44, but caliber and it's more made for a snake round, has a shot shell in it, but it's an aluminum casing. And then furthest one to the right is a rifle round that has a steel casing. And reason I use these different calibers is I just didn't have all the same caliber, 40 caliber ammo that was found at the crime scene in each of these different types of metals. And it really wouldn't matter if I, even if I had all of them 40 caliber, the elements and the environment, it's going to react the same regardless of if it's a 44 or a 40 or a 9mm or I can't remember what caliber on the right it is, but 308 or something, I can't remember. But regardless of what it is, each of these will react left out in the elements and environment, and that's what we're going to be looking at. And so I figured that I would try to set up the scene, and everybody knows this scene. This is where I went up, and I have my I did the CSI reconstruction of some of the synthetic blood tests. The F tree was done up here. Also, I did blood spatter on some of these tree trunks and on the ground, and that I did. And I think about a year and a half ago now. It's been quite a while. And I went back and reprocessed it with luminol so that y'all could see how the outdoor processing and how long luminol would last in this type of environment. But anyway, for our test today, I went in, and it's a hardwood forest, as you can see. And up there at the at Delphi, in that creek bank, there's a lot of hardwoods, a lot of leaves. If you look at the crime scene images that's been released, you'll see a lot of this same, almost identical debris of leaves on the ground and everything as this. It's very similar. This is an intermediate photograph. And then, of course, as we get closer, you can see the individual casings that I throwed on top of the leaves. I just dropped them. And you have the aluminum casing, the steel casing, nickel, brass, and then just a brass casing that I let drop onto the top of the leaf pattern. And I did this for a specific reason, as you'll see here in a few moments, for the fact that we don't know at the crime scene during the what occurred there, was there any bare areas or just topsoil exposed during some type of struggle or certain incidents or contact made at any point, because a lot of times during these struggles, you can have debris pushed to the sides. You could have where leaves are totally gone and you have exposed earth. And to make sure that we can cover that area, this is just a little close-up with a placard in it. And this is the process actually of what crime scene would do, is that they would take a picture such as this manner and then introduce a placard with measurements so that you can see and it have the different types of information for it. But I also scrape cleaned an area so that a full contact with the soil, so that when I place some other additional ammo at this reconstructed crime scene, where I could get absolute good contact with the soils. And you'll see here that after I placed these bullets in a particular manner, that I stepped on them to try to simulate that a buried condition, as was noted or has been argued that this bullet was located at the crime scene from being buried. And was it buried by being stepped on from top of a leaf pattern or the debris such as this? And I have images of this I'll show you in just a minute, that not only did I step on where it was bare soil, I went up here to each of these casings, and I stepped on them with my foot and my shoe and crushed them into the ground as good or as best as I could. to simulate that, yes, without there being any bare ground, that we have an ejected round, we have a drop round that goes to the ground, and you simply just step on it. What would it look like when it was, imprinted into the ground? And I'll show you those images here in just a moment. But I also wanted to have the bare earth so that I could step on it. And I know that in here I have 3 rows of ammo. The reason I put 3 rows of this ammo with different types of shell casings is that I took one that if the bullet was left or the unspent round was left at the scene day of, I wanted to get that first day of what 24-hour exposure and contact with the soil were, and what would it look like. And so that's what I did. I did day 1, and I have those bagged, photographed, and towards the end of the presentation, I'll show you each of those so you can see that after I removed that. But now I have 2 more rows of ammo that's buried in the soil in this manner, as you can see here, that's just imprinted by being stepped on into that soil, so that we can evaluate them. I may leave another row up there for 2 weeks before I go and recover it. Or I may, and then I've got another one where I can leave it a month. And that way we have a good understanding of at least 30 days of environmental exposure and conditions in the wintertime, which is, can be everything from ice to snow to rain to bright, warm, sunny days. Although it's far colder in Indiana than it is here in Georgia. But Mrs. Steve will tell you it's far colder in Georgia than it is in Florida.
Absolutely.
She has her electric blanket on right now. She can't believe it, how cold it is. Miserable. But anyway, so I set this up so that I could do a long-term study of this. As far as it being scientifically, everything, I just wanted to see, can us as lay person, that this is something I would be asking the lab to do, and experts from that. And they may have studies on it and everything else, that they already have a book that in this condition, this is what a shell casing looks like after being exposed to the elements. I just never saw it. And I thought it was a brilliant question that Teresa Criminality asked the other night. And I said, well, let's see if I can't figure this out, and see if I can't come up with something that would better let us all explore this and understand it a little bit better, and see if there's something that would support law enforcement saying, yes, we found this bullet day 1 and this is where it was, or yes, we found this bullet a week later and this is the condition it was. And so if those conditions, and you backtracked it, that, oh, that bullet had to be there for 7 days, that's huge. Same with that, oh, yes, we found this bullet and we found it 30 days later, and this is a condition of it. If there's a rate of exposure that can be scientifically proven and repeated, that's huge. But now if they have a bullet and it says, well, we look at it and it takes a year to get in that condition. And like I said, I don't know, but we're about to find out what happens to certain ammo for the next 30 days or so. All right.
Criminality's in chat.
Hello, Criminality.
Ruckus.
And Ruckus, good to see you. The Criminality, like I said, I want to thank you for posing that question to me the other night. And but these are the bullets, and you inspired me to go out and test. On the left, I went up to the microscope, placed these bullets here, and for each type of casing material it was made out of, I took a photograph in its new condition and then a 24-hour exposure. And when I say new condition, some of this ammo I may have had sitting in my gun cabinet for months, if not a year or two. So as far as being exposed to a lot of the elements, it's new to that. And that would be the case for a lot of ammo out there, even for homeowners. So, but anyway, this is a nickel brass new round, And on the right, it's the same bullet and that I took up there, stepped on it on top of the leaves. These are not the buried ones. These first 4 are 24-hour exposure of the bullets that I dropped on top of the leaf pattern or leaf debris and just stepped on. And you can note that on the casing itself, and you'll see on each of the casing for some odd reason, and it's something that I wouldn't anticipate it, but there are little particles of leaf that are attached to that shell casing. Is that important? Can be. For the fact that if we have certain leaves and DNA from trees and things, that you might be able to support that this bullet wasn't planted later, or that this bullet is the exact same bullet that was recovered from the leaves that came from that canopy. And that would be questions I would ask the lab experts. Can you trace back and support this, that if there's something that says, well, we don't know if this bullet came from there or came from somewhere else. And if you have particles of debris and soil, as you'll see here in, momentarily, if when we get to the buried ones of what was discovered, and I was surprised about it. And as I was processing them and I was looking at them, I said, yes, this opens up a lot of lab testing, a lot of lab reports that can support a lot of different theories. And support both the defense and the prosecution, because it does open up avenues of scientific studies or expert testimony of people that can test these elements and all different types of plant debris. And then we have on this, this is a brass, and as you can see on the right, it has a leaf on it. And like I said, this is one of the bullets where I just simply dropped on top of the leaf debris on the ground and stepped on it. Also, if you'll note on this one, on the rim to the right, under the 24-hour exposure, on the rim dead center, there is a marking on that rim. That's because this bullet at some point has been cycled through one of my firearms. I didn't fire it. I just cycled it through. That was by a total accident for whatever reason. But I know that, noticed that, and you can see it also on the other image to the left, but it's a little bit off center on it. But today when I was photographing and processing, I saw that, and I found it extremely interesting that you can see some of the ejection marks of it being worked and cycled through a firearm. A lot of people cycle ammo through a gun without firing a bullet. This is an example of one that I did just by ownership of a gun.
Sleuth is in the chat.
Hello, Sleuth. I also, like I said, I was in Sleuth's chat, and when criminality and this came up, and thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone that covers this case. Now, this is the aluminum new, and then on the right, you have the 24-hour exposure. I didn't see, there's no leaf debris on this one, but you can see whereas when I stepped on it, aluminum is extremely soft. And it did put a mark on the casing. Found that interesting. And then the steel. This is the one that you can note that if you look up there on the left-hand side of the steel new, while there is some rust, within 24 hours, when you come over here to the 24-hour exposure of it laying outside, that, yes, it appears that there's a higher degree and more rust that had developed overnight. And this is just plain rolled steel that made for ammo. And it had some leaf debris on it also. Now, each of these bullets that were exposed for 24 hours, I reintroduced them to the crime scene after these photographs were made. So a week from now, I'll go and collect them again and photograph them again and bring them back and have them prepared for another show for us, and I'll share that data with you. Now we'll get to the buried ones. And the buried ones, when I pulled the first bullet out of the ground, I said, this is absolutely something I wasn't expecting. and I don't know why. I've seen it 100 times, but I have forgotten. This is a nickel brass, the new one on the left, and this is what the buried one looks like from just stepping on it, and it's sitting there in the ground for 24 hours exposed, and one side of it being buried or being pressed into the ground. We have a lot of soil, and with soil, there's a lot of things that can be done with soil. There are scientists out there that can absolutely work miracles and tell you so much about the elements that are in that soil and what amounts. And so that you, as I said before, that if you wanted to take that soil and say, was this bullet at some point buried in this area, they would be able to go and look at this soil and tell you yay or nay, and give you their expert opinion. And I found that extremely interesting. And as you'll see with every bullet, that as I processed it and brought it out, that this is the, like I said, nickel brass. This is the brass one. As it sat there for 24 hours exposure, buried, just by stepping on it and leaving it there for 24 hours, that soil adhered itself to the casing, even with the aluminum, and found that interesting. And then with the steel also, so that when you see this, that they'll be able to tell. And then you think about, well, while they were processing the bullet, what if they cleaned it? What if they don't have anything supporting it from the soil that bullet was ever at that scene? Is there a way of backtracking? Well, in law enforcement, or at least our department, and as we went to the crime lab and brought things back, whatever you bag it up with on day one, anywhere down that line, all the way to court, that original crime scene bag is part of that trail. And within that bag, what did I find that fell off of these bullets that had been buried? And even the ones that had the leaves that's just on top, there's leaves in that bag. But the soil debris that was located in the bag, as I removed each casing had a separate bag that from the buried ones, and every one of those bags had soil debris in it. And this is the soil debris that's inside of this one bag. And like I said, there's experts or scientists out there that within their evidence bags, you would find this soil debris, and that could backtrack and say, yes, this bullet came from that scene. And also, that would be something that if there's some stranger that says, hey, I found that bullet there, and there's no proof that it came from there, and law enforcement has it, and it's one of these bullets that was buried, and it has that soil debris, they should be able to test it, I would think, this is my opinion, and say, well, no, this soil doesn't match what you're saying. Or if they say that there's no soil on it, why isn't there soil on it? So it opens up a nest, a hornet's nest of questions. And in all fairness, those are things that should be asked and should be answered. For the fact that, like I said, every casing had soil. If it was buried, we should see something like this. And if it was buried, even if it's cleaned back to its new like condition, inside the bag itself, there should be soil. Now, that's just my opinion from the testing I've done so far. And if you have some way and you're interested and you think I'm totally wrong, go out there and test it yourself, guys. Send me the information. Show me where I'm wrong. But I appreciate Sleuth and Criminality for covering it the other night and giving me this opportunity to answer this question. And it's a good question. And I'm looking forward to see what comes up in trial and how will the defense attack this, because this may be one of the methods that the defense will go after that bullet. It was buried there. I want to see where that soil came from. That's a fair question. But anyway, if we have any questions, we'll look at that.
You have a few. All right, so let's see here. I hope I can remember how to do this. Okay, let's see here. 8:30. True Crime Time
Yeah.
is in chat.
Hey, true crime.
All right, so let's see here. Look what I get to do tonight. Oh my goodness. I've been waiting on this. Ready?
I am.
All right. This will do nicely. 1 membership.
Y'all have made her so happy.
Look here. Gail Hurd. 1 membership.
Like a little kid.
Oh, I'm not done yet.
She's like a little kid.
I am not done. I've been waiting on this. Gail Hurd. 1 membership. Thank you so much.
We do appreciate everybody, guys. It's absolutely awesome.
I really do. Mitzi.
Hey.
11 months.
Yes.
Wow.
And we missed Mrs. Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so sweet. All right. I'm not done yet.
I know.
Kelt. Now, I had 2 of these, Kelt. I hope you didn't do it twice by accident, but I get to do this again, so thank you very much. All right, let's see here. And 1 more for Miss Gail.
Thank you.
She's been a busy girl.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's see.
I think she likes watching the blue light as much as you
look
like.
here. 1 more. Thank you so much. Oh, and from This Will Do Nicely.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all
humbling.
very much.
Yes, that
That
means
was
a lot to us.
fun. I appreciate it. Oh, look at here. Molly, 17 months. Wow. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Glad you're here tonight.
I believe Kristen was my first member, and Molly is 17 months, is also one of my first.
Yep, got to be one of the first.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, now, you ready?
I am.
Questions. Let's see here. And from Margaret, excellent question. Before, during, or after crime committed, and who owned the weapon prior? Could they have unspent rounds from the same weapon or at least an alibi to 1317? You get all that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Go.
All right. And that's is a great question also, for the fact that we know nothing about the history of that firearm other than that law enforcement will have verified that on this date, I would assume and that there will be some type of evidence showing that this firearm was in the possession of Richard Allen. Now, as far as could he have bought it from someone a month prior that had access to this property? That's a good point. And that's where the study or what we're looking at right now of that's very critical about how long was that bullet there at that crime scene. Because if it's brand new, if it matches the 24-hour exposure stuff, and of course it's non-issue. If law enforcement found it anytime during the time that they had that scene secured, and it's in this type of condition here, or even in this condition of the 24-hour exposure buried condition, that there's some type of scientific standings that this is what it looks like, and only at 24 hours, it's a non-issue that only this bullet could have been left during this specific time frame. Just don't know what that bullet condition was. That I'm sure at some point, just as soon as that chain of custody started, there will be someone within just hours of receiving that bullet. Photographs are going to start being made of that bullet. And I'm talking about, anytime you take certain types of evidence, one of the first things that you do is you photograph it. Regardless of where it comes from the crime scene or from a witness, that if we have access to a camera, that we're going to photograph it. So yes, that's going to be critical of those time frames. All right.
Okay.
And as far as the markings, I have confidence or I have a belief in the crime labs. I've worked with them for years. Can crime labs make mistakes? Absolutely. There's nothing that's infallible. That there can be mistakes made, but day in and day out, uh, with the abilities of going back and checking and on those markings and having verification from other experts, I believe that the report will stand and be allowed in the court. Doesn't mean that the defense won't bring in some expert that says he's a fool. That's not correct. So we'll see.
All right. And from SP 74 at True Crime Web, as the crime scene was processed for nearly 4 full days, isn't it highly likely it was recovered in that time frame?
I would expect so, and I hope so. Anything, and I'm hoping that even if it was recovered within that 4-day period, that they have not only the bullet recovery and condition it was recovered, the photographs of when it was recovered, what location, and the process. I hope all of that's there, and I hope it fits this condition of a 24-hour to less period. But I'm looking forward to, as we go forward with the other testing, to see what a bullet or an unspent round looks like sitting in the ground and being exposed to the elements, because I still have those, not only the ones that are buried, but the ones laying on top of the leaf debris.
Okay. And from Kelt, this is sort of a question to you, but he was actually talking to somebody else. How could you put a bullet in the magazine and not leave DNA?
Well, there's a lot of things that can mess with DNA. And guns are regularly cleaned. There's solvents, there's oils. Gun operates in that environment. Can that have some impact upon DNA? I expect so. Doesn't mean that it absolutely will destroy it, but there is a possibility that it could contaminate and alter. And there will be things that will be brought up by the experts that are in those fields. But you would think that, yes, there is DNA. And I think that, yes, there's touch DNA. I just don't know the condition of how well kept that gun was, what type of solvents, oils. Anyone that owns guns can tell you about those cleaning supplies that are necessary. And like I said, I believe some of them would probably be harsh to DNA.
Okay. And GP, are they going to use the bullet in the case?
Yes, it's a huge thing. That's how come I think the best supporting evidence that I believe shows that it was recovered early on during law enforcement presence is that if the suppression by the defense, if that request is trying to get the bullet or the unspent round and the gun suppressed, is for the fact that there is a chain of evidence from early on, from those early days that this bullet was found. Now, what value was given to that bullet? Did the FBI believe that some officer may have dropped it or one of them may have dropped it? Don't know. But yes, absolutely, if they've already had it, if they sent the bullet off to the crime lab, they have a report on it. The report is part of discovery. They plan on using it in the trial.
Okay. So this is coming in fast.
Excellent. I'm glad you're here tonight.
Yeah, well, maybe I should have come in on a little bit slower night.
Oh, no.
Let's see here. Let me just stop there. Okay. JD, not JP. No, I don't know. All righty. Let's hide this one. Let's go here. And from this account, is it possible the bullet was stepped on while processing the scene?
Good point. Great point. Absolutely. And that's how come I did this both ways, by the bullet being on top of the debris. And also that if that bullet was left there during some type of struggle and there was movement of the leaves, or leaves were thrown back over the crime scene, trying to cover up certain areas of where struggles occurred. If the offender chose to do so, that he may have stepped on it himself or just left it there and throwed a handful of leaves over the bullet and it got stepped on and buried. Don't know, but yes, it wouldn't probably be the first piece of evidence that was ever stepped on by law enforcement. I've witnessed it. I've seen, I'll go into that one day. Things that happen at crime scenes.
That would be interesting.
Oh, yeah. People make mistakes.
Okay, dokie. Right. And that account goes there, that goes there. And GP at True Crime Web, the casing should have numbers on it, right?
Well, now there was a time, and I don't know if that there was a time where people either initialed when they had certain pieces of evidence, and that was way back, that they had a identifier mark on it. They used to have a little scribe. A lot of the CSI guys had little scribes, whereas if you found a casing or something, you could go inside the casing and make a little tracking mark. I don't know if they did that on this bullet or not. But now the casing will have numbers on it as far as caliber, manufacturing, stamp, things of that nature. But as far as a serial number or identifying number from the manufacturer, no, the shell casing will not have that. But there is a process, and I don't know if they still teach about marking certain casings, but there was a time way back that, yes, when a law enforcement officer came in contact with a certain item, they will mark it.
Okay, and from Todd, is there any reason that caliber could be used for hunting, or a handgun could be used for hunting?
Yes, some guns here in Georgia, I know you can use a pistol of a certain caliber for hunting. So yes, it could be, absolutely.
Okay, and look here for Miss Grace, member for 7 months.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. And Sleuthy Goosey, what about fingerprint being on the end, Steve, from loading the clip with your thumb?
Absolutely. For the fact that a lot of fingerprints are made from the oils of the skin. And as I was talking before, not only from the solvents and people that handle guns, clean guns, you know what your hands feel like during the process. Now, as far as oily fingers and loading guns or loading the bullets into a magazine, it's not a real good idea for the fact that oils can seep into around the primer and cause misfires. And that's not something good to have in a weapon that may have to be used to defend yourself. So most people try to keep the bullets free of oil, but that doesn't mean still that just from the human oils and contact from that thumb, I'm surprised. Now, I would expect they did that. The unspent round was processed for fingerprints. Doesn't mean they got it. Fingerprints, it depends on the individual. Some people have extremely dry hands and they do not leave good fingerprints. Some people have the right type of salts and oils, and they leave excellent fingerprints. Just don't know what the case is of whoever loaded this firearm.
Okay, and SP74 helps us out here, says the PCA states Allen has owned the P226 since 2001. That's a bunch of Ps.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yep. Like I said, they would have had to show that he owned it and is in possession of it during that time. That's how come the questions were asked. Did you loan this gun to anyone? And where was it? Was it ever missing? Things of that nature.
All right, and Lone Pony. I'm sure this has been answered, but I'm late, so I apologize. But I guess we don't know the type of bullet found.
We don't. We know the caliber, and we know it was cycled through. The expert says Richard Allen gun, but we don't know if it's a. Oh, you got it covered up at the bottom. That's all right.
Oh, wait a minute. I'll move it. Hold on.
We don't know if it's a nickel brass, a brass, or aluminum, or steel casing. That we don't know. I don't know. Now, y'all may know, but I don't. I haven't seen it. The most common one out there is just probably brass. There's probably more brass pistol ammo out there than that we can count. Nickel brass is a little bit higher end, costs a little bit more, or it used to. I guess it still does. Aluminum is the low end. Steel is the super low end of casings, and I don't use a lot of steel, but I have some. But of the one of these four, I would expect absolutely that what was found at that crime scene is going to be one of these four types of metals.
All right, and that was Lone Pony. Okay, J.D. Coop, why wouldn't they have put the bullet in the RL search warrant knowing that he owned several handguns?
Well, that was early on into the investigations, one of the first one. And it depends if the FBI had value and how far along we're in the search or into the investigation. That it may have not have had a report back from the crime lab that, oh, we have a bullet here that is commonly carried by law enforcement. Could have been a law enforcement officer that dropped it. And so all the persons that were at the scene that day that may have have access to that area and checking and eliminating each officer's gun may not have been completed at that time. And they didn't want to mention it. Plus, it could be one of those things that the FBI chose to hold close to their chest at the time, that we're going to do a lot of things, but we're not going to let them know that we found a bullet at the scene. And that's, that we're looking for firearms, but we don't want to explain why we're looking for firearms. And for the fact that if you let on that, hey, I have a uncycled bullet from a specific firearm, what would the offender do with that firearm? And we are, more than likely it would have been pitched somewhere.
And from Tony, Mr. Steve, what are your thoughts about the unspent round? Oh, we just did that, didn't we?
Yes.
Oops.
Yes. And that, like I said, it's a good question.
My bad.
No, there's going to be a lot of those. And people,
Okay.
That's probably one of the top questions asked.
Ready?
I am.
I get to do it again. Gail Hard, one True Crime Web membership. All right. And Lee and Susan, 14 months.
Excellent.
Fabulous. Thank you
Unbelievable.
so much.
Unbelievable. We got such loyal.
That is. All right. And Sensei, 14 months. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for reminding people to hit the thumbs up. It helps us.
All right, let's see here. Now I just kind of have all my stars are done. So let's go see. Okay, and this is a good question. SB74, wouldn't you keep the unspent round secret? No need to put that in a search warrant.
And that's why I was saying that FBI at that point may be one of those key points that they wanted to keep secret. Just like I believe that in the original release of that, what is it, 47, 48 frames of that of bridge guy walking that on that loop, that I think that even the gun was hidden so that they wouldn't release that tidbit of information of what type of weapon was presented. And that's just another thing that they kept close, because while there was rumors of it, until much later into the investigations was it mentioned about the firearm. So yes, there's a lot of things that law enforcement keeps secret, and that could have been one of the things, is that we just don't want to mention we have that bullet.
All right. And Miss Olivia, member for 10 months.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all so much. Let's see here. All right, that's it for me.
All righty, guys. Well, if y'all have any questions or anything, throw them in the comments, and we'll get to them as best I can this week. Mrs. Steve is getting back on the road this week. I'll be going later back down to Florida. But next week I'll come back and or the week after and dig up some more ammo out of the ground up there and see what it looks like, and also see what the condition of the rounds that are laying just on the leaf debris itself. See what type of condition they're in. But it is something that may answer a lot of the questions. And like I said, it offered up some other things for me to consider approving if this bullet came from that crime scene, and that if it came from that crime scene, that we can take the argument away from that whoever found the bullet, and I have no, that if it wasn't found by CSI, whoever found that bullet, it takes away the argument that if it has this soil debris on it, it came from the crime scene. Because if an individual picks up something from the crime scene and takes it to law enforcement or meets them somewhere in the area, they're not going, the average person won't realize to go there and contaminate it with soil from the crime scene. So it opens up a lot of supporting evidence and testing that can be done. But I want to thank everybody for being here.
One more.
Okay.
This here will give you something else to do.
Sure.
All right. USA Libertarian. Can you look at how long a fingerprint might last in the elements if you aren't already?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of surfaces out there. And actually, what I will do, each of these bullets were handled by me prior to, and I'll process each of these bullets that I've recovered. I have a fingerprint kit, thanks to you, our community and our members and all our supporters. And that's a good question, good points. Don't let me forget to process. And that'll be another part of this that I will put into our next show on the bullets. Was I able to recover any fingerprints from these bullets, both from the top of the leaf pattern and also the buried ones. So that's a good point. Thank you.
And Cincy wants to make sure that you don't forget to pack your blue light.
Hey, I got a brand new studio back screen.
Whole new setup.
Yes,
coming.
And I will take my old blue light, mobile blue light with me in case.
Just in case. In
case my new blue light doesn't work, but I've got a new one and a new studio back screen.
All right, one more for Alley Cat. Look, I get another blue light too. Yes, you do. Thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed my blue light tonight, so thank you. Thank you for that.
But
we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Y'all stay safe out there, and I will see y'all next week or so.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, mods.